So I've got a husky tail here that I have patterned out for a current suit. What I have is just 1/4 inch really thin foam, and I kind of shaped it and got the general roundness and everything that I wanted. Covered that in saran wrap and then duct tape. And now I end up with this pattern here. And I figured I would show you guys how I'm going to make this so that way it lays flat and I can transfer this to 1-inch foam so it's a little bit thicker and has more durability to it on a bodysuit. So you can see it doesn't want to quite lay flat. So what I do is I pick out which areas it needs to relax a little bit. So from previous experience, I know that this is probably going to be about 3, maybe 4 or 5 pieces. So we have this part here at the front that's going to want to lay flat. So I'm just going to kind of draw a quick line down where I think it ought to go. And we're going to give this a cut and see how it lays. I've got scissors specifically that I use for cutting duct tape, so that way I don't try to use them on anything else, because these will not cut fur or fabric anymore. You can see that already wants to lay more flat, but it's got a little bit of a wrinkle here where it's puckered still. So I'm going to probably put in a cut, give or take here. Basically what you're looking for is wherever it's puckered still, that's where you want to put a dart. So that's what this is. This is a dart where it doesn't cut all the way through. It's just a little kind of V shape to help it relax and lay flat. Now that can be traced to a piece of paper, so we know that is a good shape. Now over here, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we have a different kind of situation up here where this kind of wants to fold over on itself. So where you see that, instead of cutting through this way, we're going to need to cut around this way. So to do that, I usually kind of flip this up, the majority of it, and you'll see where this kind of wants to lay flat against the table. That is give or take where I'm going to put this line, so that way this whole piece, the tension will release on it and it will want to lay flat. So I'm going to say about here. So we're going to take my marker and I'm going to draw, give or take, a line. And we're going to go right to the tip of the tail here. And I'm just going to follow all the way around. And I'm going to put in a couple of registration marks, so that way if I have to correct this, I can line it back up. Or when I transfer this to paper, I'll have my marks, so that way when I cut this out of foam, I'll know where the pieces go. I'm going to follow this around all the way to the tip with my gummy tape scissors. So this piece here, you see how it still wants to pucker. It doesn't want to lay flat. When it lays this way, this bit here overlaps on itself, and we don't want that. So this piece itself is going to need to be cut in half. So we're going to put a line here with a registration mark, and I know this one was further up, so I'm going to label this A and this one B, just so I can keep track. And we're going to cut here, and hopefully that will help it lay flat. So there we go. So now we have 2 pieces that actually want to lay flat. This is just a little wrinkle in the tape. So there. So we know those pieces go here. And now for this last big curvy piece at the tip of the tail, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to need one across here and maybe a couple darts. So this is the tip of the tail. So let's see. I already have lines here that line up with these darts, or these registration marks. So let's see if we can work with one of these, just to make things a little bit easier. Try and flatten this out as I go. And we're going to draw all the way down. Put a couple registration lines in the middle. Keep them different. You don't want consistent, even marks, because that'll confuse your pattern. So I've got 2 markings here that are closer together, followed by 2 more that are closer together. I'm going to cut that up. And there already. This part is laying flat, but we've got a big old pucker here. So this is the tail tip. So I'm going to put this, because this one was here. So we're going to label this one A, tip, and B, tip. So that way we know which pieces go with which. Kind of hard to see the Sharpie on the shiny duct tape, but you get the idea. So I'm going to cut up here just to help get some relief for this curve. And there we go. Now if there's a tiny bit of a bubble, you're okay, because this I'm tracing to foam, and even if you were tracing this to fur, fur has some stretch to it, So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's when it's really buckling and puckered on itself that you have to worry. If you wanted to, you could put another dart up here, but you know what? I think that is already laying flat enough for a piece of paper. So let's go over to the B, and see how this big bubble is here? That we need to fix. So we're gonna come over, and wherever it is the most strong of a curve, the most exaggerated curve, is where we want to cut. You don't want to have to cut over here because this is already laying flat as if it were a piece of paper. We want to cut over here. So this just takes time and practice in doing it and knowing where you need to cut. So I know I need to go here and about at that angle to relieve this curve. We're just going to keep cutting until the pattern starts laying flat. You don't need to go too far. If you go a little bit too far, here, I'll show you. So if you cut too far, see how you can see my desk underneath to about here. You can see a little bit of pink. Here, the duct tape is already touching itself, so it's not puckered like that. So that means we don't really need that cut. So what I do, grab a little bit of tape, and we're going to just tape that back together. There, because we only really need it cut to about there. And you can see that is already laying nice and flat. Sticking up a little bit here, but this I could still trace to a piece of paper, which would then be traced to my foam. So there, my one curvy husky tail has now been cut into, oops, bump the camera here. It's now been cut into 5 pieces. And this is going to get transferred to foam. And from there, we're going to tape it onto the bodysuit and cover it in fur, and then we'll be done. So there, hope that helped a little bit.